Hi, my name is Father Chad Ripperger. I am the superior of the Society of the Most Sorrowful Mother. And one of the things that we did when we moved to Colorado is we began a group called Liber Christo. And the focus of this group was to implement a protocol that we had designed. When we were in Oklahoma, before we actually moved to Colorado, the number of people that we were vetting in order before they would actually be able to come to see us was substantial. So the 1 year that we actually did the statistics, there were about 2,000 people contacted us. We talked to over 600 people on the phone. We narrowed it down to 150 people who we thought had legitimate reason to see us. And by the time we got done, there was actually only 3 people that actually needed to see us. As a result of that, what we began to realize is that we were spending a lot of time doing the initial vetting, and a lot of the people that were coming to see us didn't actually need to see us, and that the type of spiritual warfare issues that they did have very often could simply be solved with if they had a simple, better relationship with God. And so one of the things that we did is we designed a protocol when we came to Colorado so that the initial vetting could be done by the groups that were connected to Liber Christo, but also it would follow up protocol. And we designed a 4-stage protocol. In this 4-stage protocol, the first stage or first phase is what we call it, is what we call the prayer prescription. And what we learned is that a vast majority of people's spiritual problems can be solved with just basic spiritual discipline, that the people coming to us were very undisciplined spiritually. Even if they were going to mass on a regular basis, even if they were getting to confession, they weren't praying consistently. They weren't doing certain things on a regular basis. They weren't mortifying themselves, etc. And so we found that once we put them on this prayer prescription, which also included things like media fasting and the like, once we did that, we found that about 60 to 70% of people's problems just simply got cleared up. We didn't actually have to see them. They didn't need to see us. And as long as they stayed on that prayer prescription and maintained that discipline in their spiritual life, then they didn't have any recurring issues. Then the second phase, if people started praying, the prayer protocol, one of the things that would happen is we also used it as a diagnostic. So we structured it in such a way so that the people who would do the prayer protocol, if there was diabolic influence, if it was possession, we would see one pattern. If it was diabolic obsession, we'd see a different pattern. If it was purely psychological, we'd see another pattern. And if it was oppression, we'd see yet another pattern. And so we put them on this protocol, this prayer prescription, and we found that when they would do that prayer prescription, it would be a pre-diagnostic so that we could recognize, okay, this person needs help. And this would also help us to know what kind of help they actually needed, where they needed to go with it. So if we recognize that, okay, this person could possibly have, by the patterns, extraordinary diabolic influence, if the protocol was making it better already, we just say, well, just stay on it. You don't need to see us. You don't need to spend the money or the time or the energy to come see us. You can just do this on your own. And very often people would be self-liberated through that process just by having a basic spiritual discipline and coming closer to God in the process. But then if we began to see that the problem was a little heavier than that, then we would put them through the second stage of the protocol, and we call that the removal of obstacles phase. And basically that second phase deals with getting things straightened out in people's lives. Like, are their sacraments up to date? Is their marriage valid? Did they get married in the church? What is the actual authority structure like within their home? Do they have right order within the home? Are they praying at home, etc.? So we would, and also basic catechetical issues, because we found when we were in Oklahoma that a lot of people who came to us, even if they got liberated, they were uncatechized. And so you had this large problem of, okay, now what do we do with these people? Because they don't even know the basics of the Catholic faith, that they've been liberated, and we don't want them to fall back into the particular problems that they had. So what we did is we front loaded that in the protocol. So where we make sure if there's catechetical issues, then we started making sure that those catechetical issues were addressed, so that we removed all the obstacles that they could get to grace. And we found that after that, that meant that from the very beginning to that stage, 80 to 90% of the people, their problems simply cleared up. because they were just leading a basic Catholic life, and they were being serious about their spiritual life by developing their relationship with God and maintaining a proper discipline in their spiritual life. So then if it became clear that the spiritual problem was even stronger than that, but they were still doing the prayers during that time, we would begin to see the other patterns of, either possession or obsession or oppression, etc. And when we got to that stage, if we realized this person needs a little bit more help, we would then hook them up with a local priest, would then begin prayers with them. And the advantage of having the people do the prayer prescription during the first and second phases, it meant that the people were disciplined enough to go the distance. A lot of times people would come to us, we would start praying with them. It would get very difficult because spiritual warfare can be very painful. And so then they would simply stop coming because they just didn't want to deal with the pain that was involved. Whereas if they've gone through this prayer protocol, they've got the discipline, they can go the distance. And even when things start getting difficult, by this time their soldier skills, so to speak, have been built up. And so we know that they're going to go the distance. And so we'll connect them with a priest. If it's diabolic obsession, normally speaking, that priest can actually address those issues by a simple set of prayers that we suggest to him. If we suspect it's something more than that, than like possession, over the course of the prayers with the priest over a month or two, it'll become clear that it's possession because there will be some type of preternatural sign or what have you. And so that begins to prepare it so that by the time it gets through that third phase where they're seeing the priest, either one of two things happens. Either everything clears up, like is in the case of oppression or obsession, or if it's possession, then once the demon preternaturally manifests, then the fourth stage of the protocol is that we would actually take the case over at that time. Mm-hmm. And that did two things. One, because we had a pre-diagnostic, we didn't have to spend a lot of time praying with people in order to determine what their actual spiritual issues were. But then the other side of it was that they had built up the discipline. We know that they were more than likely to go the distance. Once the demon preternaturally manifests, a lot of times the people, because they have that discipline, they're like, okay, what do I got to do? And they would just buckle down and do what they had to do. And then the other part of it was, so we knew that they would actually go the distance. We had that pre-diagnostic, but then at that stage, we knew this person is most likely to benefit from our help, because a lot of times people would come and they would want us to do our side of the work without having to be disciplined spiritually. Also, by this time, any patterns of sin, because of the prayer discipline and the first phase, and then the second phase of removing the obstacles of grace, by this time, any habitual mortal sin is out of their life. They're working on venial sin, and they're praying consistently. And so the time it takes to liberate them is much shorter than if you're starting from scratch with them. So this was the general idea over in relationship to setting up Liber Christo, which actually helps to facilitate the protocol and educate people on the nature of spiritual warfare, but then also to design this protocol and help people through the protocol. We've also found that people don't necessarily have to work directly with us. They can just simply, if they think they're experiencing spiritual warfare, they can simply do the protocol themselves. And then, or at least the first phase. And like I said, a majority of the people, they just start the first phase. Then at that point, they'll experience a lot of alleviation of the basic spiritual problems that they do have. And especially today, since as the world gets more and more evil, it's necessary, I think, for people to get a kind of spiritual combat training. And that's what this basically is. So if you think that you can benefit from it, I would encourage you to pursue the protocol and actually be able to exercise it. And even if you don't think that you're under spiritual attack, it will help you a great deal in getting spiritual discipline within your life. One of the tools that can be very beneficial for those who are interested in following the protocol is Father Heilman's new book coming out, Peace Through Strength, the Prayer Journal. That book will help a great deal in giving people that discipline. It gives a structure, it provides meditations and things like that throughout for 90 days, which is a very good time to begin the process of building that spiritual discipline and that intimacy with God. One of the things that the book highlights is meditation itself, which we have found that when people do meditation on a regular basis, that if they've already been doing meditation on a regular basis, that it's very rare, it's extraordinarily rare that they have extraordinary diabolic influence. Whereas if they are struggling with, say, diabolic obsession or oppression or other forms of diabolic incursions in their life, that if they start meditating every day for a certain period, then what will happen is over the course of time, it will simply blow it out. And the reason for that is because meditation uses the imagination that in order to consider the various things that pertain to God, and by putting holy things in the imagination, it literally drives the demons out of the imagination, and so they can't obsess them. So this is one of the reasons why we would really recommend this book as a tool going forward, especially for those who are not necessarily going to follow our official protocol because their intention is not necessarily to see us, but they just simply want that spiritual discipline in their lives and want that closeness with God that this will foster and bring about. God bless.